Good evening and welcome to Sunday Night Special with me, Richard Taylor, your host here on Rich Politics. We have got so much to talk about. What a week it has been. But before we get into it, first of all, can I ask you to do something? Hit that subscribe button. Don't forget the bell notifications as well. I'd really appreciate it. Well, what a week we have seen here in the UK and, of course, more closely to home for us that live here in Wales. Boris Johnson has announced as of yesterday that next week that the whole of the UK, well, not the whole of the UK, because Wales, of course, is doing their own thing, and so are Scotland and who knows where else. They're going into lockdown. That's right, the inevitable has happened. The Prime Minister has decided enough is enough, and that the R rate is so high, according to the scientists, we've got to shut down the whole of our economy again. So that means businesses will suffer, employees are going to suffer, especially the self-employed, which I'm in that category, are going to suffer also. But nevertheless, it's the right thing to do according to the government. Here in Wales, of course, Mark Drakeford taking a different line. He has locked down Wales without any financial support or backing by the UK Treasury, using it as a political football to say, well, you didn't extend the furlough for us in Wales when we went into lockdown, now you're doing it for the rest of England. Well, the reality is this, Mark Drakeford. You were told that there was no possibility of that support being extended to you if you went into lockdown at that time, and you decided to go ahead with the lockdown. Or because, let's be frank, the Emperor down at Cardiff Bay just wants to be different from everybody else. Question is, do lockdowns work? What's the point in having them if all we're doing is delaying the inevitable? Now, John Redwood has been quite vocal about this on social media over the last few weeks, and I agree with him. I tend to agree with him. Look, if you keep locking down people all the time, all you're doing is suppressing the virus, and it's going into hiding, in the sense in people's enclosed spaces, in homes or whatever they are in lockdown. It's spreading like wildfire. You open up everything again, which is what we've been doing, this pattern of lockdown, open, and the virus just goes mad again. And so are we just waiting for a vaccination? Are we delaying everything until there's one found? We're told that there's about 10 of them already in process in different labs and different types of vaccines by a professor today on the Andrew Marr show. And I wonder if we're waiting for that as the answer. Well, it might not be the answer. We don't really know. They're in testing stages and trials, but it might not be the answer. The truth is this, I've always advocated this, and you might completely disagree with me, and I can, you have to respect my opinion as much as I respect yours. And I do, but my opinion is simply this, that you cannot keep a society locked up forever. You have to allow this virus to pave its course, and of course, sadly, it has taken many people's lives. In fact, I've had close people, friends of mine who have got loved ones who have died from COVID. So it's a reality, it's real. I'm not into conspiracy theories, I do believe it's real. However, how do we handle it? You can't really keep people locked up forever. I would say it's more like a community immunity rather than a herd immunity, because we're not cattle, let's be quite honest about it. And so the reality is, ladies and gentlemen, unless we shield the vulnerable and protect the elderly at this time and make sure there's financial support there for them and allow the rest of us to get on with normality, go back to work, open the gyms. Why are they shutting the blooming gyms? So why are they shutting down the gyms? Who knows? It's blooming madness. Yeah, that's right. So we'll keep everybody locked up, and those of you who've got mental health issues, you can suffer as well. That's what we're going to do because we believe that's the way forward. Let's be quite frank, I don't think any politician truly knows what they're doing. It's a pandemic. It's a virus we didn't know nothing about. It's obviously the China virus, as Donald Trump calls it. We'll talk about Trump in a few moments. I've got a guest coming on probably tomorrow night, actually, to talk about the campaign and the debate in America with Joe Biden and Donald Trump. Well, what else has been happening this week? Well, apart from the lockdowns happening, which we're all used to by now, where we should be anyway, drinking more alcohol and consuming way too much food. Of course, this is going to be a vicious cycle until they find a cure, which is very unlikely because vaccinations you have to try them, test them. If they work, they do great. What about the side effects? Never affected me. But the reality is we have got to find a way out of this lockdown, because you cannot sustain, a government cannot sustain this. The Chancellor has extended the furlough scheme, which means people are going to continue to get 80% of their wages paid by the government. Oh, yeah, that's right. So we're going to be on that payroll for a little bit longer, thanks to the Chancellor. But it's not the answer. What happens when it finishes? What happens when we come out of lockdown? Do we see the R rate go up again, and then all of a sudden we all go back into lockdown again? Well, who really knows? All I know is this, that this lockdown is not just killing the economy, it's killing people's lives. It's killing their livelihoods. It's killing us not just with our mental health, but it's killing our normality. It's killing our civil liberties. And this has to change. The government needs to grow a set of gonads and say, right, okay, look, we get it. These lockdowns are not working. Can you imagine if they admitted the lockdowns weren't working and actually gone on with trying to prepare to normalise society again and give us a little bit of hope by saying, look, you lot shield who are vulnerable and who are potentially susceptible to dying from this disease, and the rest of you that are fit and healthy, so we'll keep the gyms open for you, that's right, yeah, and then you can continue with life as normal. In other news this week, of course, we've heard sadly of the 3 deaths of people who were murdered in Nice. It was a terrorist attack, but not how Sky News chose to report it. In fact, let me read this tweet to you. It'll come up on the screen now. They actually said, a clash of cultures in France between freedom of expression and Islamic blasphemy beliefs. Really? Sky News? No, this was a terrorist attack. And thank God for Macron, who's come out and condemned it and said this ideology should not exist in our society. And I completely agree with him, and so do millions and millions of ordinary people like you and me. Of course, Islamists who are extreme in their intent, their ideology is to convert everyone to Islam, and if you don't agree with them, you're a dog and you should die. This wasn't religion against freedom of speech, or an ideology of Islamists who think that they can kill people in the name of their God or their religion. It's murder. They beheaded someone, for goodness sake. And the press try to play it down. Let's be quite honest, the mainstream media, that's right, the mainstream media that really make my blood boil at times, they decided to report it as, well, this clash, you know, we can't really offend the Muslims. Yes, we can. Yes, we should. Like, you can offend me as a Christian. You can offend any religion. Offence is not a crime. Of course it's not. It's not hatred. It's just educating people that we can scrutinise, criticise. We're allowed to disagree and agree in a free society, and long may that continue, to fight for the rights of the freedom of speech. So it was evil against humanity. That should have been the headline, in my opinion, because that's what it was. This is an evil regime, an evil ideology, and it needs to be wiped off the face of the earth. Well, talking about ideologies, I see the Labour Party this week have been a bit of a mess. Jeremy Corbyn has been suspended. I say that with a smile, of course, because I think the guy is a tool. I think he's a sympathiser with Hamas and the IRA, which we all know he is. And of course, he's a terrorist-loving person. So why on earth would we have any sympathy with Mr. Corbyn? I noticed, of course, he set up a crowdfunding page to get support for a legal campaign because of this report that was... And in fact, this report, by the way, only the BNP have ever been investigated. Get that? Let that sink in. The British National Party is the only party that's been investigated by this body. And of course, the Labour Party for anti-Semitism. That is rank in their files and in their party. And of course, Keir Starmer is complicit. Of course he is. And so was the rest of the front bench. They all knew about it. Neil Griffiths and all of those were part of it as well. And Diana, but you can name them all. They're complicit. Staying with anti-Semitism, of course, closer to home here in Wales, Plaid Cymru. That's right, they call themselves the Party of Wales, but they're clearly not, because Wales voted to leave the European Union and they wanted to stay, and they still want to rejoin the EU. So they don't represent Wales, they represent Adam Price. Plaid Cymru candidate Saha Al-Faifi, I think I've said that right, was found out to have made anti-Semitic comments on her social media, on Twitter, and of course she was investigated and the party found no wrongdoing. The Jewish community said this, and I quote, the Board of Deputies of the British Jews said that anti-Semitism is tolerated in Plaid Cymru. That's what they said after their inquiry and investigation into this candidate. And guess what? Plaid Cymru have posted their regional list for candidates standing in May's election next year, and she's standing as a candidate. That is right. So what's happened now? Plaid Cymru are having an internal inquiry led by their party leader, not really an independent one. So anti-Semitism is rife in Plaid Cymru. Just for those of you who didn't know, it truly is. The Welsh nationalists are the most xenophobic people you will ever meet. Their vitriol is beyond belief. The stuff that we get off them, and their language is quite colourful too. That's Plaid Cymru for you. So I wouldn't vote for them even if they were the last party on earth, because they don't represent the people of Wales. We can't finish the broadcast without mentioning the US elections. Next week, we will find out who the actual president of the United States of America will be, or the next one, I should say. We noticed that Nigel Farage was being over there with Trump, stood on a stage endorsing potentially the next president of the United States of America to lead the free world. The polls have Biden ahead, but can you believe the polls? Who really knows, given the way that the mainstream media are and the fake news that is out there? Talking of fake news, BBC reporter last night, I was watching very carefully, reported while she was in Pennsylvania. She said there are hundreds of people stood here. Take a look at this. That's right. Hundreds of people, she said. Well, I hope she's not in charge of anyone's budget. That's all I can say. Thanks for tuning in to Rich Politics, and I'll catch you Wednesday, Friday, and Sundays. Take care. Hit that subscribe button.